Dear friends, family, and members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, this is Marlene again with Building Zion, and this is the third paper in my series, Women Come Out of Obscurity. This paper I've titled Ruth, a True Woman and Daughter of God. My original thought was to have this third paper be about Eve, but a couple things happened in the past few weeks that changed my mind. First, there are times as I work on these papers that I think to myself, is this really necessary? Do I really need to study these things? Or do I really need to write these papers? Do I really need to write papers about women in the scriptures? People understand who they are. People understand women. I know that in our world today, this is not all true, but these are some of the thoughts that creep into my head. Why would I suddenly think these things right before we study about Ruth? The last few weeks showed me why. I will not give specific details, but several close people in my life within the past few weeks have voiced and demonstrated how it is that they see themselves in terms of sexuality and gender. They have gotten caught up in the voices of the world, and even though all of them are members of the church, they now see themselves in a way that is contrary to the teachings of Jesus Christ. Coming to find these things out left me feeling gut-punched and heartbroken that they have fallen for the lies Satan is openly and shamelessly broadcasting around the world. This happened on a more personal level, but then on a more general world level, suddenly the question is being asked, what is a woman? With the corresponding answer being, whatever you consider a woman to be. Meaning that it could literally be something different for every single person. I believe that never in the history of the human race has this question and subsequent answer to what is a woman been given. Just the fact that people feel that this question even needs to be asked clues us into the confusion that our world is swimming in. Obviously, Satan would like me to abandon my study, but I now see that it is needed more than ever. And who did we study this last week? Ruth. A shining example of how any human being should behave themselves, and in my humble opinion, I would like to submit Ruth as a clear living definition and answer to the question, what is a woman? As President Monson stated, a model of ideal womanhood is Ruth. I can't even believe this. My intent in these papers was just to help us as women understand who we are as daughters of God. And now we don't even know what a woman is. Satan will take who we are and grind it further and further into the ground. Once a big enough population buy into a lie, he will send out the next lie. About a month ago, President Nelson spoke at a worldwide devotional for the young adults. He said, "My purpose tonight is to make sure that your eyes are wide open to the truth, that this life really is the time when you get to decide what kind of life you want to live forever. Now is your time to prepare to meet God. Mortal lifetime is hardly a nanosecond compared with eternity, but my dear brothers and sisters, what a crucial nanosecond it is. During this life, we get to choose which laws we choose to obey, those of the celestial kingdom or the terrestrial or the telestial, and therefore which kingdom of glory we will live forever. Every righteous choice that you make here will pay huge dividends now, but righteous choices in mortality will pay unimaginable dividends eternally. Please do not be uninformed or naive about the opportunities and challenges of mortality. In that spirit, you need to understand three fundamental truths that will help you prepare your future course. First, know the truth about who you are. Second, know the truth about what Heavenly Father and His Son have offered you. And third, know the truth related to your conversion. I believe that if the Lord were speaking to you directly tonight, the first thing that He would want to make sure you understand is your true identity. My dear friends, you are literally spirit children of God. You have sung this truth since you have sung the words to I am a child of God. But is that eternal truth imprinted on your heart? Has this truth rescued you when confronted with temptation? I fear that you may have heard this truth so often that it sounds more like a slogan than divine truth, and yet the way that you think about who you really are affects almost every decision you will ever make. Close quote. My words. Before we get into the life of Ruth, I would like to ask you, as we read, to identify the difference between culture and tradition, and doctrines and principles. We often get caught up in the culture and traditions, and then feel confused or offended. For example, when Naomi asks Ruth to sleep at the feet of Boaz and then propose marriage to him, in modern terms, we look at this as very weird. We look at it as either manipulative or degrading. In the culture of the day, it was neither, but rather quite the opposite. So if we can separate out the culture and tradition and pull out the doctrines and principles, this will help us to understand how this and other stories in the scriptures truly apply to us today and what Heavenly Father would have His children know. As we look together now at the life of Ruth, ask yourself, did Ruth truly understand who she was? And did that understanding affect every decision that she made? Did she see herself as a daughter of God? We learn starting in Ruth chapter 1 that there is a famine in Bethlehem among the people of Judah. As a result, Elimelech and Naomi left Bethlehem with their two sons, Mahlon and Chilion, and traveled to Moab to find better planting ground. While there, Mahlon and Chilion married two Moabite women, Ruth and Orpah. There is no explanation in the scriptures, but for some reason Elimelech died, and then 10 years later Mahlon and Chilion died, leaving Naomi, Ruth, and Orpah behind. Let's look for a moment specifically at Ruth. Who was Ruth? Ruth was a Moabite woman. The god of the Moabites was Chemosh, which involved idol worship. She then later married an Israelite man and adopted the God of Israel. In today's terms, she was not born a member of the church, but later married a man who was a member and became a convert herself to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Let's now look at some of the events of Ruth's life and the decisions she made. First, Naomi, Ruth, and Orpah, all three lost their husbands and left Moab to travel back to the land of Judah. On the way, Naomi became concerned for the well-being of her daughter-in-laws. In Israelite tradition, when a husband died, the son's brother-in-law or next of kin male were then charged to take care of the dead man's wife. In this case, there were 3 widows. Naomi was returning to her hometown where her extended family resided, but she knew that it would be better for 2 reasons for Ruth and Orpah to return to their extended family in Moab. We read in Ruth 1:8 through 12. Starting verse 8. Go, return each to her mother's house. The Lord deal kindly with you, as ye have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant you that ye may find rest, even of you in the house of her husband. Then she kissed them, and they lifted up her voice and wept. And they said unto her, Surely we will return with thee unto thy people. And Naomi said, Turn again, my daughters, why will ye go with me? Are there yet any more sons in my womb, that they may be your husbands? Turn again, my daughters, go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. If I should say, I have hope, if I should have a husband also tonight, and should also bear sons. Would ye tarry for them till they were grown? Would ye stay for them from having husbands? Nay, my daughters, for it grieveth me much for your sakes that the hand of the Lord is gone out against me. My words. Here Naomi is basically telling Ruth and Orpah that she is unable to care for them. The girls have family in Moab, where they have none in Judah, and she cannot make new husbands for them to care for them. She cannot have more children that could care for them in any way. Because she did not have the means to care for them, Naomi felt that they would fare better going back to their people and homes in Moab, where they could find new husbands. What at this point is the decision that Ruth makes? Ruth chapter 1, 14 through 17. And they lifted up their voices and wept again, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clave unto her. And she said, Behold, thy sister-in-law is gone back unto her people, and unto her gods. Return thou after thy sister-in-law. And Ruth said, Entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee. For whither thou goest, I will go, and where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God. Where thou diest, will I die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if aught but death part thee and me. My words. What choices did Ruth make? Ruth decides not to go back to her people with her sister-in-law Orpah, but instead chooses to stay with her mother-in-law, care for her, and stay faithful to the God of Israel. Ruth, understanding that she would have no one to care for her, showed true love and concern for her mother-in-law and showed true conversion to God. She was willing to sacrifice her own security to make sure that Naomi was cared for, as well maintaining her religion that she was truly converted to. As we review her decisions, what characteristics of God, of a daughter of God, are demonstrated in Ruth? She demonstrated love for her mother-in-law, charity, loyalty, true conversion to the Lord, commitment, courage, perseverance, and steadfastness. This quote comes from the Institute Student Manual. It says, in her beautiful expression of loyalty and devotion to Naomi, Ruth said that she not only wished to stay with her mother-in-law, but also desired to make Naomi's people her people and Naomi's God her God. Later, Boaz, praising Ruth's concern for Naomi, says to her, A full reward be given thee of the Lord God of Israel, under whose wings thou art come to trust. Both of these passages indicate that Ruth was converted. My words. Naomi and Ruth then returned to Bethlehem, entering into the land where lived a kinsman of Naomi's husband, Elimelech. Ruth and Naomi were truly destitute, and so, as the poor would do, Ruth offered to go into the fields to glean grain to make a living for herself and Naomi. Again from the Institute Student Manual, it says, Poor people following the reapers were permitted to glean or gather the random stalks, possibly all that stood between them and starvation. In addition, the edges of the field, where the sickle was not as easily wielded, were left unharvested. The poor were welcome to that portion as well. My words. Ruth knew that she was there by the grace of Naomi. She had entered into a land where no one knew her, and as she had no brother-in-law nor sons of her own to care for her, she now needed to essentially convince a kinsman of her husband and father-in-law, who was a more distant relation, to care for her. What did Ruth choose to do? Ruth chapter 2, verses 2 through 3. And Ruth the Moabitess said unto Naomi, Let me now go to the field and glean ears of corn after him in whose eyes I shall find grace. And she went and came and gleaned in the field after the reapers. And her hap, or rather chance or good fortune, was to light on a part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of the kindred of Elimelech. My words. Ruth hoped that as she worked gleaning grain to provide for her mother-in-law, that she would have the good fortune to be able to glean in the field of Boaz, and that he would become aware of her as a daughter-in-law of Naomi. Her hope that she would find grace in his eyes meant that he would accept her as one of his kinsmen. We find out as we read that Boaz had already become aware of her because of her previous actions. Ruth 2:8-13. Then said Boaz unto Ruth, Hearest thou not, my daughter? Go not to glean in another field, neither go from hence, but abide here fast by my maidens. Let thine eyes be on the field that they do reap, and go thou after them. Have I not charged the young men that they should not touch thee? And when thou art athirst, go into the vessels, and drink of that which the young men have drawn. Then she fell on her face, and bowed herself to the ground, and said unto him, Why have I found grace in thine eyes, that thou shouldst take acknowledge of me, seeing that I am a stranger? And Boaz answered and said unto her, It hath fully been shewed me, all that thou hast done unto thy mother-in-law since the death of thine husband, and how thou hast left thy father and thy mother and the land of thy nativity, and art come unto the people which thou knewest not heretofore. The Lord recompense thy work, and a full reward be given thee of the Lord thy God, under whose wings thou art come to trust. Then she said, Let me find favor in thy sight, my Lord, for that thou hast comforted me, and for that thou hast spoken friendly unto thine handmaid, though I be not like unto one of thine handmaidens. My words. What choices here did Ruth make? Ruth chose to leave her mother and father in Moab, the land of her nativity, and to embrace the people and culture of Israel. She chose to care for her aged mother-in-law and enter into the fields to glean, working very long hours. She cared for Naomi as a kinsman, taking on great responsibility. Ruth in no way was bound to take care of her mother-in-law for two reasons. One, it was the responsibility of a male kinsman to care for the widowed, and two, because Ruth was not a blood relative to Naomi, she again had no responsibility to care for her. Boaz took note of these things and thus found favor in his eyes. He blessed her by telling the young men in the town to leave her alone, allowed her to eat dinner with the other gleaners of the field, to glean exclusively in his field, to glean without rebuke, and he even commanded that extra barley be dropped for the purpose of Ruth being able to glean them. What characteristics of a daughter of God do we see in Ruth in these choices she made? Along with the previous characteristics we already discovered, we also see in Ruth a willingness to work hard, humility, integrity, bravery, faith, and hope. Naomi then seeks to arrange a marriage between Ruth and Boaz so that Ruth may truly be cared for and raise up a posterity. Naomi tells Ruth to wash, anoint, and clothe herself, and then go in, and after Boaz has eaten and has fallen asleep from working, lay down at his feet. Ruth does these things, and if we follow the symbolism of wash, anoint, and clothe, we can liken this to the preparatory temple ordinances of today that come before a sealing ceremony. Ruth chapter 3, verses 8-11. And it came to pass at midnight that the man was afraid and turned himself, and behold, a woman lay at his feet. And he said, Who art thou? And she answered, I am Ruth thine handmaid. Spread therefore thy skirt over thine handmaid, for thou art a near kinsman. And he said, Blessed be thou of the Lord, my daughter, for thou hast shewed more kindness in the later than at the beginning, inasmuch as thou followest not young men, whether poor or rich. And now, my daughter, fear not. I will do to thee all that thou requirest, for all the city of my people doth know that thou art a virtuous woman. The Institute Student Manual states, the word rendered skirt also means wig, and her request is not unlike our idiom, take me under your wing. Gesenius, the famous Hebraist, says it was a proper proposal of marriage, even though the girl was doing the proposing. The idiom protect me, or in other words, means be my protector or husband. And continuing in the Institute Student Manual, according to our customs, indeed, this act of Naomi and Ruth appears to be very objectionable from a moral point of view, but it was not so when judged by the customs of the people of Israel at that time. Boaz, who was an honorable man, and according to Ruth 3:10, no doubt somewhat advanced in years, praised Ruth for having taken refuge with him and promised to fulfill her wishes when he had satisfied himself that the near Redeemer would renounce his right and duty. As he acknowledged by his very declaration that under certain circumstances it would be his duty as Redeemer to marry Ruth. He took no offense at the manner in which she had approached him and proposed to become his wife. On the contrary, he regarded it as a proof of feminine virtue and modesty that she had not gone after young men, but offered herself as a wife to an old man like him. This conduct on the part of Boaz is a sufficient proof that the woman might have confidence in him that he would do nothing unseemly, and he justified such confidence. My words. What choices does Ruth then make? She trusted in her mother-in-law. She honored the traditions of the Israelites. She showed honor and respect to Boaz because of his kindness and compassion toward her and Naomi. She proved herself virtuous to the community and Boaz by not chasing after young men. What characteristics of a daughter of God did she demonstrate? Trust, honor and respect of traditions and people, virtue and modesty. Boaz then acknowledges that he is her kinsman, but having a respect for the law identifies a kinsman who is of closer relation than he. So he sends Ruth home to Naomi with her cloak full of barley, and Boaz leaves to speak with the kinsman. Boaz speaks with the kinsman, asking him to purchase the land in Moab that now belongs to Naomi and Ruth, and in so doing to raise up the name of the dead, Mahlon, husband of Ruth, to his inheritance, that his name be not cut off from among his brethren. In other words, if he were to buy Naomi and Ruth's land, he would then, by taking on the responsibility to marry, care for and raise up seed unto Mahlon. The kinsman refuses, claiming that it would damage his own inheritance, giving Boaz permission to purchase the land and marry Ruth. Ruth 4:13-17. And all the people that were in the gate and the elders said, We are witnesses. The Lord make the woman that is come into thine house like Rachel and like Leah, which two did build the house of Israel, and do thou worthily in Ephrathah, and be famous in Bethlehem. And let thy house be like the house of Pharez, whom Tamar bare unto Judah, of the seed which the Lord shall give thee of this young woman. My words. The people of Bethlehem had come to know Ruth and knew that she was a virtuous woman. When Boaz said that he would take her to wife, the people blessed her to be like Rachel, Leah, and Tamar, who were the mothers of the house of Israel and Judah. I just want to note here the honor that is being bestowed on Rachel, Leah, Tamar, and Ruth. These are wives of the house of Abraham Israel, Pharez, and Boaz, or Malon Elimelech. We hear frequently of the house and the posterity promised to those houses. God covenants with the priesthood leader of the house to have such posterity. But it takes a righteous, virtuous woman and wife to build that house. There is no righteous house without a righteous man and a righteous woman. There is also a lot of wordplay that is about to happen in these verses. The end of verse 11 reads, "And do thou worthily in Ephrathah, and be famous in Bethlehem." The people are speaking to Boaz, who, because of his honor and virtue, is well known among the people already. But the people are then speaking to him in terms of having children and building a house, that his house may be famous, the house of Boaz, Malon Elimelech, which will birth the house of David, and as we see in the following verses, which will birth Christ and will be famous in Bethlehem. Verses 13 and 14. So Boaz took Ruth, and she was his wife, and when he went in unto her, the Lord gave her conception, and she bare a son. And the women said unto Naomi, Blessed be the Lord, which hath not left thee this day without a kinsman, that his name may be famous in Israel. Here the wordplay really begins. The way verse 14 reads, it indicated that because Boaz is the kinsman and has not left Naomi and Ruth without a kinsman, that his name will be famous in Israel, referring back to verse 11, "And do thou worthily in Ephrathah, and be famous in Bethlehem." However, if we read the verse grammatically, we take a different meaning from it. Blessed be the Lord, which hath not left thee this day without a kinsman, that his name may be famous in Israel. That his name be famous connects to blessed be the Lord. And the reason the name of the Lord will be famous is because he has not left Ruth and Naomi without a kinsman. Both ways of reading this verse are correct, as Hebrew writing often built in multiple meanings and understandings. In verse 14, we also see strong evidence to the family ties of ancient Israel and subsequently the way that God would have us care for our own families today. Because of the love and honor Boaz maintained, he saved Naomi and Ruth. But likewise, these two women brought honor and fame to Boaz by blessing him with a posterity, by building him a house. It was a joint effort. We so often look at things one-sided and say, well, Ruth and Naomi just wanted to be cared for, and we're just using a good man in his name. Or we might say, well, Boaz only gained the fame he did because of Ruth. These two people are an equation. Both sides of the equation have to be present and complete in order for the other side to be true. If one side is missing, the other side does not exist. And if one side is incomplete, i.e., lacking in the characteristics of God listed above, then the other side of the equation is false. Both Ruth, including Naomi, and Boaz received the blessings they did because of their faithfulness, honor, virtue, compassion, and conversion to the Lord. Verse 15. And he shall be unto thee a restorer of thy life, and a nourisher of thine old age. For thy daughter-in-law, which loveth thee, which is better to thee than 7 sons, hath borne him. More wordplay in this verse. And he shall be unto thee a restorer of thy life. Boaz is referred to as a restorer or a redeemer to Naomi and Ruth. This is not only because he literally saved their lives and name, but also by Boaz, Ruth was able to bear a son. And from that son, Obed, came Jesus Christ, the Redeemer of the world, who is the restorer of life. Naomi is also told in this verse, "For thy daughter-in-law, which loveth thee, which is better than 7 sons, hath borne him." The wording in this seems weird if you don't see the double meaning. Referring to Boaz, "For thy daughter-in-law bore him," hath borne Boaz, hath borne a son unto Boaz. I keep saying Boaz. Boaz hath borne up Boaz. Maybe these are part of the meaning. But if we look at the phrase, "restorer of thy life," then the meaning becomes clearer. Thy daughter-in-law hath borne the restorer of thy life. In other words, Ruth hath borne the line that will bear the restorer or redeemer, Jesus Christ. Okay, then verses 16 and 17. "And Naomi took the child, and laid it in her bosom, and became nurse unto it. And the women her neighbors gave it a name, saying, There is a son born to Naomi. And they called his name Obed, which means blessed. He is the father of Jesse, the father of David." From the Journal of Discourses, this is President John Taylor. He used the example of Ruth to describe modern saints who also were willing to give up homes and kinships to be where their God wanted them to be. He said, "Thanks be to the God of Israel, who has counted us worthy to receive the principles of truth. These were the feelings you had and enjoyed in your far distant homes, and your obedience to those principles tore you from your homes, firesides, and associations, and brought you here. For you felt like one of old, when she said, Whither thou goest, I will go. Thy God shall be my God. Thy people shall be my people, and where thou diest, there will I be buried. And you have gathered to Zion, that you might be taught and instructed in the laws of life, and listen to the words which emanate from God. Because one people and one nation partake of one spirit, and prepare yourselves, your progenitors and posterity, for an everlasting inheritance in the celestial kingdom of God." President Spencer W. Kimball said, "No virtues in the perfection we strive for are more important than integrity and honesty. Let us then be complete, unbroken, pure, and sincere, to develop in ourselves that quality of soul we prize so highly in others." My words. There is so much more that can be written and understood from the 4 chapters of Ruth. I could write an entire book breaking down and analyzing the different aspects and layers of these things written. But for my purposes in this paper and in discussing the true nature of women as daughters of God, what is written will suffice. Now to return and answer my opening questions. Did Ruth truly understand who she was, and did that understanding affect every decision that she made? Absolutely. Did she see herself as a daughter of God? Without a shadow of a doubt, yes. Both Ruth and Naomi were true women who truly understood who they were and exemplified that understanding in every aspect of their lives. And I want to finish with a quote from Heber C. Kimball that was given in the Journal of Discourses in a talk titled Faith in the Priesthood. He said, "If the daughters of Zion go and glean wheat, they may be like the women anciently, increase all around. She had been a barren woman formerly, but gleaning wheat put her in the notion of receiving." Brothers and sisters, I want to conclude with my testimony that I know that Heavenly Father has given us the gifts and talents and blessings that are right for us in our lives. He will give us eyes to see, ears to hear, and an understanding of what is truth and what is false. Ruth was a true daughter of God. She was a true woman. Women are not something that is imagined. Men are not something that is imagined. Women were women before they were born, and men were men before they were born, just as it says in the proclamation to the world on the family. I know this to be true. I know that our Heavenly Father will guide us in our understanding of any confusion that we feel at the world and their shouting voices to the contrary. And I share these things in the name of Jesus Christ.